And after the gala that night, every celebrity was supposed to go back to Frank's house and do something. Tell a joke, sing a song, but you were entertaining Frank, and he would sit there by his piano. And someone had to do something. Don Rickles was there, and they were all there and entertained all evening long. And about 2:30 in the morning, the pianist looks over at me and goes, I go, okay, here goes nothing. So I walked over and I leaned over to him and I told him what I was going to sing. And he looked at me with an expression as though I had just licked his ear. And he said, okay. And he starts to play. And I began to do one of the stupidest things I have ever done in my career. I sang Sinatra to Sinatra. And at the end of that, there was no applause. Everybody just looked at Sinatra. And he looked at me and leaned back in his chair and he goes, you know, that was the song that Joe Raposo wrote for me to sing to my wife. Were you singing to my wife? And I said, no, sir, I was not singing to your wife. I assure you, I was not singing to your wife. I was not. Just wondered. And then he said, you sounded good. And that was the first time anyone had ever encouraged me. And it was the last time I ever needed it. And I went back and I grabbed my glass of Chardonnay and I sat back against the wall and I had this smile on my face from this side to that side because I knew somewhere in the world Martin the Italian had just dropped dead. Well, all the sun, our attitude, and all the rhymes ring so true. I don't find the words to say, the thoughts I long to bring to you. When I hear lonely singers who are just as lost as we, making noise, loud melody.
Excited because when I was in my 20s and came to New York, one of the first shows I saw was Abelard and Heloise starring John O'Hurley.
Oh my goodness.
As a matter of fact, he lived downstairs from my ex-husband.
Abelard and Eloise, Eternal Love is what it was called. That was my first show in New York. I got that show, and people say, they always say, what was your big break? I walked up the wrong way to a fire on a fire escape. I just fired one of the actors, and the girlfriend at the time that I was seeing,
yes, I know.
dragged me in. She says, "They just fired one of the guys. Come over, you got to." So by the end of lunchtime, after I sang and I had read, that was my first Broadway show that never went to Broadway.
With your girlfriend?
Yes, I was actually with her. I was with it, and it was
like I said, I know more.
It was very funny experience. It was the worst musical ever done in New York.
You've gone back and done musicals because I don't think most people know what an amazing voice you have.
I have done 1,500 performances as Billy
of Chicago.
Flynn of Chicago, and I did King Arthur in Spamalot. I did
that I didn't know.
And long before that, I did the Pirate King and Pirates of Penzance, Brigadoon. I've done Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Quite a few musicals.
Now, what is your show about? What are you going to be talking about?
The show is called A Man with Standards, and it really is kind of a memoir show.
Who you are?
I call it A Man with Standards because I was lucky enough to grow up in the 50s and 60s, in that period when of the Great American Songbook, when music and lyrics actually
meant something,
and we were storytellers. But I also call it that because I was lucky enough to grow up in a time when, in the shadow of gentlemen, men who had standards, and I talk about that because the music at the time,
and women had them as well.
The music and the manners were indistinguishable. We related to each other that way with the music that we did. Luck was a lady. We would dance cheek to cheek. Love was a very splendid thing. Some of that has seemed to kind of gone away now. And as I get older, I like to kind of look over my shoulder and remember those times, because they were times of authenticity and they were times of substance, and I kind of find them a little lacking as I look around today.
If you had to choose a composer to work with in this day and age, is there a composer you'd like to work with?
No one contemporarily, but I would say Henry Mancini was my favorite, because Moon River is probably my favorite song of all time. But I also love Peter Shaffer. Not as a composer, but as a writer. I thought the things that he wrote, Amadeus and Equus, and were the things that shaped my career as an actor. And so those are probably the people that I would find the most meaningful. I'm a Puccini Verdi kind of guy. I love the melodies.
Can we see you doing Broadway again?
I continue to do Chicago, the musical. I'll have it out on tour again, all over the country. We're already planning the revival of Spamalot for the 2018 season. Not 1918, that would be. But that would be very Monty Python if we did it in 1918.
Very much.
But we're already planning my time for that. So yes, and I just did a wonderful kind of pre-tryout of a new musical called The Age of Power, which is the story of Tesla and Edison back in the turn of the century, and that great argument over what type of power we were going to be using. And it has a very
Where was this done?
Out in L.A. We just did a kind of a concert version of it.
Who wrote it? I'm surprised I don't know this.
Music is done by the guy who wrote Urinetown.
Oh, okay. Oh, then I have heard of this. I have. I didn't know that's what it was called. If you had to choose a song that says who John O'Hurley is, what would that song be?
Well, I would go back to Moon River. It's my favorite song, and I think because of that song, My Huckleberry Friend. When I was 4 years old, I was allowed to wander on my own, as kids were back then. And I would get down to the pond at the end of the road, and that was my secret hiding place. I would spend all of my time down there, most of it by myself. But because my mother was a hummer, she hummed songs, the theme to Moon River was always in my head.
Know most about John O'Hurley?
That I'm dedicated to living an extraordinary life.
You will be my music. You will be my song. You will be my